Hey, thank you so much for taking the time to check out Crossroads, the YouTube page. Also, if you like what you see here today, check out our website at crossroadsantioch.org. You can enjoy us every week with our online sermons and even be a part of our digital small groups. We would love to have you part of our fellowship. If you enjoy what you hear today, please hit the subscribe button right below here. Hope you enjoy the message. God bless you. Jesus Christ did, and He died and He rose again for your sins. He rose for you. Somebody give God a hand about that. Are you excited that Jesus came back for you? Amen. I am so excited. You guys can have a seat this morning. I'm excited about this morning. I have been so excited all week about having my friend Michael come and share his story. It is fantastic. But I will tell you this, seeing people here that I work with in the seats makes me a little nervous. You look out here. See, some of y'all don't know we have celebrities in the house too. You know, we not only have our outlaw car racers, praise God, but back here in the back, this is some friends of mine, Joshua Collier, that I work with. If y'all ever heard of the band Need to Breathe, that was their bass player. So Joshua came to support Michael, y'all. And y'all, when you see everybody, give them a big hug and tell them how much you love them and glad that they're here this morning. Amen. So Michael, you ready to do this? I'm so excited to hear Michael's testimony. Michael and we have worked together for about 2.5 years, and I have been there a lot longer. Michael works with me at Dave Ramsey's office, and Michael is such a wonderful guy. And when you leave here this morning, you are going to know how wonderful he is. I promise you. And I appreciate you guys coming out and supporting Michael. It's fantastic. You ready? All right. Here you go, man. It's all you.
Worship team one more time. That was fantastic. Thank you, Brian, for that introduction. And it was pretty cool a couple of weeks back when I took Brian to lunch and I asked if I could just share my story. First thing I said to him, I was like, Brian, it's like, how do you do it? How are you working full-time for Dave Ramsey and also the pastor at your church? And he looked me in the eyes and he was like, Michael, honestly, I wouldn't be able to do it if I weren't in ministry with my family together. And he means that. He practices with his family music 3 or 4 times a week. I remember that from a goals presentation. And the first time that I spent time with Brian outside of the office, we went to the Well Coffee House, and they had a worship night. Only in Nashville can you have a worship night at a coffee house. But that's what it was. And so I just want you to know you have a faithful leader in Brian and his family, and I'm so honored that I could speak here today. And today is going to look a little different. I'm not going to preach a sermon. I'm not going to try to convince you of anything. I really just want to share who I am, my story, and I hope that it connects with you wherever you're at in your life. So I love Nashville. Let's get that out of here. I moved here in 2011 for school. I went to Tribeca University in Nashville, and it was my junior year. I was a student athlete, and I was running cross country, and it was coming up towards the end of first semester, and I was tired. I just needed a break. I needed a night out, and so I asked my good friend Jasper if we could go watch our friends sing. They were singing in an a cappella choir in downtown Nashville, so we went. It was a beautiful night. It was all a cappella voices, so just all voices, no instruments. I felt great. We came back to the dorm, watched a movie. I went to bed about midnight. And then I woke up at like 4 in the morning, and I had some severe stomach pain. And I didn't know what was happening. I had an 8 a.m. world history class, and so I told myself, I was like in my mind, if I'm not better by 8 a.m., I will go to the nurse on campus. Like, she'll be able to take care of me, right? And so it's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock's rolling around, and I'm starting to feel really bad. I'm pale. I'm starting to sweat. I think I might get sick. Awful, right? And my roommate sees me, and he's like, Michael, He took one look at me. He's like, Michael, you look so bad. You need to go to the emergency room. I was like, I'm not going to the emergency room. I was like, that's too expensive. I'm going to go to the nurse on campus. So I went to the nurse. She took one look at me, and she was like, Michael, I can give you some pills. Honestly, that's all I can do. I can't do extensive testing here. You need to go to the emergency room. I thought, I'm not going to the emergency room. So I drove a mile to a Concentra clinic down the road. I walked in, and it was the same story. She saw me for the first time. She's like, Michael, you look awful. We can't do any extensive tests on you today. Please go to the emergency room. In fact, you look so bad, you're not allowed to leave. So we're going to either, one, call an ambulance for you, which you will pay for, or you can call your friends to come pick you up. So I texted my friends. They were in my world history class, Andrew and Isaac, and they came. They picked me up from the Concentra clinic. They drove me to the hospital, and they already had a room waiting for me. So I go into the room. I sit down on the bed. They take one look at me. I look awful. He's in a lot of pain. They hit me with morphine. Honestly, I felt pretty good. So I had never been sick before. I was not worried at all right? So I knew some of my friends had kidney stones, and that's really painful, so it could be a kidney stone. And I also know a few friends that have had their appendix rupture, and they've had to take that out, but it's not necessarily needed to survive, so if they take that out, I'll be okay. Again, I wasn't worried. And then the doctor came into the first time into the room, and he said, I want to do a CT scan on you. So I went and did the CT scan. He came into the room for the second time, and he said, I want to do an ultrasound. So I went out and did an ultrasound. Then he came into the room for the third time, and everything started to fade. I want to tell you a little bit about growing up. Not my whole life story, but a snapshot. This first photo, you can go ahead and throw that up here. Awesome. So this is a race every year in Cincinnati. It's called the Turkey Trot, and we would run it every year as a family, okay? Growing up, that's my brother there on the far left, older brother, James. That's my little brother, Tommy. And then my sister, Emily, me, and then my mom, Diana, and then my dad, Brian. And growing up, we really did have it good, like as kids. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had a lot of love. And my dad loved all of us equally. Like, he didn't play favorites. We would do races like this every year. I remember we would go to the park and we'd just play basketball or tennis together. And we had a local pool that we would all go to. And in the summertime, and some days we would just spend all day there at the pool and just have a great time. So it was really special for all of us kids growing up. But my dad and I did share something really special, and that was the sport of gymnastics. Now, I know what you're all thinking. Like, is that even a boy's sport? Yes, it is. Now, my dad, he was a wrestler. You can go ahead and take that down now. He was a wrestler, and he played football in high school. So I'm sure he didn't come home from the hospital and like hold me in his arms for the first time and look me in the eyes and say, my sweet little gymnast. Like, no dad does that, right? But that's what I was. And we had a lot of fun. So we would go to state competitions all over the state of Ohio, even a couple regional competitions, and I was blessed for him to come to one national competition as well. So needless to say, I got to spend a lot of quality time with my dad that even my siblings did not, and I hold that very dear to my heart. So growing up, everything was great. It really was, until it wasn't. I remember one night at dinner, which was rare because my mom, bless her heart, she does not like to cook, which now being adult, I kind of understand myself. But she's sitting at the end of the table, and she looks across at my dad, and she just says, Brian, is there anything you want to share with the kids? And he just gets really quiet, and he starts to cry, and he says, I'm sick. very vague, right? I mean, we're kids. We don't know what's going on. It wasn't until about 3 weeks later that we find out from family members and my parents' friends that my dad has testicular cancer, okay? Big deal, obviously, and typical recommendation for testicular cancer is you have a surgery to remove the tumor and you start chemotherapy. My dad did not want to do that. Now, there are 3 very important things you need to understand about my dad. 1, he was the sole provider of income for our family. 2, we didn't have the best health insurance, so he was going to have a lot of out-of-pocket expenses. And 3, he really wrestled with the fact of a doctor taking out a part of his body that God created, okay? This is honestly what he wrestled with. And so he wanted to wait a year before deciding to do a surgery or chemotherapy. And so he's like, I'm just going to diet and exercise. So that's what he did. I remember he went all in. He bought a treadmill, and he was running in the basement, had an unfinished basement. He was running down there. He bought a juicer. He was juicing all the time. He was drinking a lot of water. He lost a lot of weight. He went from like 220 pounds to 160 pounds, like in 3 months. And I remember one day specifically, I was at the gym training with some of my buddies, and my buddy looks over at me. He's like, is that your brother in the lobby here to pick you up? And I was like, no, it's just my dad. He just looks really good. Like, he lost a lot of weight. And so he looked great, but he was really sick. So his cancer in that year had progressed to stage 4. And so it was time for him to make really big decisions. He decided to have surgery to remove the tumor. He decided not to have chemotherapy, okay? So he starts to feel better over the next 3 months after the surgery. He decides to switch jobs because he wants to make more money for our family. So he left his job in Ohio as an engineer, and he took a job as a salesperson in Pennsylvania, actually selling those same robots. So he was really excited. I remember for the first time, my dad felt like he was going to be able to provide for our family. And so he moved to Pennsylvania. The plan was for him to work there over the summer as a contractor, and then our family would join him that fall for school. And I remember him calling us one day. He was like, Michael, it's so weird, like my leg is starting to swell up. And he called us a couple weeks later, and he couldn't even talk to me over the phone. His tongue started to swell up, and the cancer was coming back. So he started chemotherapy in Pennsylvania, away from the family. His condition got worse, so we brought him home. We brought him to Ohio, and we started treating him there. Over the next 3 months, his cancer got worse and worse, until one day I got a call from my mom, and all the kids were to come to the hospital. And it was weird. It was like my parents' friends were there, family from out of town. It's like everybody knew something that I didn't. And my mom asked my older brother James and I if we would like to see our dad, because he didn't look good. And to this day, I'm not sure if I made the right decision or the wrong decision. My brother went in first, then it was my turn. I remember walking into the hospital room, and the nurse sees this 13-year-old boy walking in, and she says, he can't see you, but he can hear you. She was trying to give me a little hope. And I walked up to his bedside, and he looked awful. He was swollen, his neck and his face, and he was sweating. He was white and pale. He was crying. But he could hear me. So I took his hand, and all I remember saying was, Dad, I know that you love me. And I love you. I love you. I'll never forget that day. The next morning, my siblings and I had stayed at our house by ourselves because the rest of the family was at the hospital. And our uncle came over, and he woke us all up, and he brought us into the living room. And he said, "I'm so sorry that I have to be the one to tell you this, but your dad died last night." We all sat on the couch, and he wrapped us in his arms, and he wept with us, and he said, "My heart breaks for you. You had the best daddy in the whole wide world." And he meant it. Everything started to fade. So here I am. I'm 21 years old. I'm in a hospital room in Nashville, Tennessee. And in walks the doctor for the third time. He kindly asks my friends, Andrew and Isaac, to step out of the room. He walks in front of me. I'll never forget this. He walks to my side. He sits down. He looks me in the eyes and he says, "Michael, I didn't expect to tell you this when you came in here today, but you have stage 2 testicular cancer." So many emotions. I was angry. I was fearful. I wanted to know why this was happening to me. My dad, he died from this. I could die from this. This isn't fair. It's not fair. See, in that moment, I didn't care about the clothes that I was wearing, shoes that were on my feet, where I was going to school, if I was going to graduate, if I was going to meet the right girl or land the right job, if I was going to be successful, none of it. All I cared about was whether I knew God and whether the people that were in my life knew whether or not I loved them. That was it. I knew when I was diagnosed with cancer that my life was going to look a lot different. I didn't know how different and how much he was going to teach me about his love through people. And there were 3 people in their family that really stepped up and helped me. When I was diagnosed, I had 2 options. One option was to leave Nashville and to move to Florida, where my family was, and have treatment, which would have broke my heart because I wouldn't have been able to finish school, and I invested a lot of time, money in there. Or I could stay in Nashville, but someone was going to have to step up and take care of me. So first person that really helped and stepped up was Mark Elliott. He was the athletic director at Trevecca University, and when he found out that I had cancer, he honored my scholarship for the spring, even though I wasn't running, which was a huge deal. That helped pay for all the rest of my school, second semester. The second person is Daniel White. He's a photographer here in Nashville. He's sitting in the front row. Funny enough, I introduced him as Brian today. That was a big mistake. I'm so sorry. That's his brother. Daniel, photographer in Nashville, super humble human being. I coached his boys in gymnastics in college. He heard my story and he shared it on his social media, and he raised $6,000 for my medical expenses, which was huge. And last, but certainly not least, was a family. And I knew this family from Ohio growing up. I was actually in preschool. They taught me in preschool, and their name are Mr. Carl and Miss Terry Moody, and they're three children, and they have a home in Spring Hill, and I am by no means part of their family, but they welcomed me into their family and loved me unconditionally as their own, as 21 years old. I will never be able to repay them for that selfless love. So Mr. Carl, he drove me from his home in Spring Hill to Williamson Medical Center for treatment. I had 4 rounds of chemotherapy, each lasting a week long for 5 hours a day. So I was there every day when people got there and still there when most people were leaving. It was absolutely the hardest thing that I have ever been through. And I wasn't sure if I would finish it, but I did. And this second photo, you can throw that up here. That's my last day of chemotherapy. I was very small and lost the hair, the whole deal, very weak. That was in February. And then I had one more surgery in May to remove some benign tumors in my stomach. And then I was clear. I graduated. And fast forward 5 years, I've had a lot of blessings in my life. I went in for a 5-year checkup in October to see my oncologist, and he was excited to see me. I mean, it had been 5 years. This is a time of celebration. When you've made it 5 years without any recurrence, it's very unlikely that cancer will come back, at least until later stages of life, like 60s, 70s, 80s. So I was feeling good. And I was in the room, and I was looking him in the eye, and I was able to count some blessings that I have had. And one was a marriage to my beautiful wife, Amanda. And I think there's a photo of that, too. That's us. So we've been married 3 years now. I did get a home in Donaldson, Tennessee, that I absolutely love. Some of our best friends, they're here today. They live in our neighborhood. And I got an incredible job that I love, that I get to partner with churches and serve them. And as I'm telling this to my oncologist, like, he's starting to get emotional. Like, he's getting emotional. I'm getting emotional. And he tells me everything's fine. Everything's good. And I went on my way. I was on cloud 9. That was a Friday. On Monday, I'm sitting at my desk at work, and I get a call. And it's my oncologist. And he says, hey, after taking a closer look at your blood counts, your tumor markers have gone up. You need to give me a call. So I knew what that meant. And I went to a room at the office, and I just buried my head in my arms, and I'm like, I'm not sick. I'm not sick. I'm fine. I'm fine. Because I didn't want to believe it. But long story short, they found another tumor near my lungs. It wasn't in my lungs, but it was near my lungs, a golf ball-sized tumor. And they were able to remove it with surgery. And that was right before Thanksgiving. And so the next 2 months, they watched my markers, and they dropped, and they dropped, and they dropped. And I was feeling good again because all signs looked really good. And then January 30th, I had another CT scan, and they found one more lymph node under my clavicle. And so this Monday, they actually just took that out. So I'd like to say that everything is okay and everything's fine and that I'm healed. But that's not the point of today. The point of today is what matters most. And when I was diagnosed with cancer the second time, my little brother, Tom, who lives here in Nashville now, he asked me, he was like, would you write a song with me? Like, I want to know what that creative experience is like. And I said, sure. He was like, what do you want it to be about? And at first I was like, I don't know. And I was like, duh. What matters most, right? All those feelings like started coming back, like as my first diagnosis and as this reoccurrence was coming, and it was like, what would I actually want to say to people if this was my last day alive? And I would want to write a letter. I would want to write a letter to anyone that has influenced my life and taught me something about love. And so that's what I did. And the song is called Teaching Me Love, and get it set up here in just a second. And I just want to play it for you guys. Some days I think I should pick up the pen, write it all down, but I can't. I can't find the time to say what's on my mind. To you, my friend, I won't wait one more minute. So here's my letter, can't thank you enough. All of my friends who have taught me so much. If I'm not here to tell you, I want you to know I'll always be with you. Thank you for teaching me love. I've seen more than you thought I would see. I'm gonna follow your lead. It's not the work we've done, but who we are in love. For us to live as Christ, to die is gain. I won't wait one more minute. So here's my letter, can't thank you enough. All of my friends who have taught me so much. If I'm not here to tell you, I want you to know I'll always be with you. Thank you for teaching me. Always have patience, forever be kind. Walk by the Spirit and never lose sight of His strength in my weakness, with tears in my eyes. I'm writing this letter to thank you for teaching me love. I can see it. I believe it. My story isn't done. The best is yet to come. My story isn't done. Here's my letter, can't thank you enough. All of my friends who have taught me so much. If I'm not here to tell you, I want you to know I'll always be with you. Thank you for teaching me. Always have patience, forever be kind. Walk by the Spirit and never lose sight of His strength in my weakness, with tears in my eyes. I'm writing this letter to thank you for teaching me love.